Why I believe they will select Trump as the next president. Voting will never change what needs to be changed, or it wouldn't be allowed. An audio blog by Jake Jackson, November 1st, 2024. Author's note. For those who have followed my work for a while now, you will know that I use the acronym THEY to mean the hierarchy enslaving you. So when you see that word in all caps throughout this article, I am referring to the system and all those who operate and maintain it. It has been admitted by insider David Rothkopf in his 2009 book Superclass that they number approximately 6,000 people. So reclaiming our power when we outnumber them by over 1,000,000 to 1 should be a relatively simple endeavor. All it takes is a plan of action and the will to implement it, but that plan is already available. There will be much more consistent content to come in the very near future once I have relaunched my business, which should be very soon. And no, this article is not an endorsement for any candidate running for any political office. It is a pragmatic opinion based on years of research and observation. Part 1. The Agenda. On June 3, 1992, delegates from 179 nations around our world convened in Rio de Janeiro, Brazil, for the United Nations Conference on Environment and Development, UNCED, with the primary objective to produce a broad agenda and a new blueprint for international action on environmental and development issues that would help guide international cooperation and development policy in the 21st century. The result of this conference was Agenda 21, a daring program of action calling for new strategies to invest in the future to achieve overall sustainable development in the 21st century. This agenda has been the driving force behind the scenes for all governments worldwide in all they do to incrementally eviscerate the rights of the people of their own nations, gradually herd them into cramped population centers, covertly reduce the population, and implement a global government which would eventually hold all power over this new feudalistic system with a technocratic overlay never before seen in history, because they simply did not have the technology for complete control of the masses in the past. But now they do, and humanity as a whole has never been in more danger of being completely enslaved than we ever have been in our known history. George Herbert Walker Bush, the conservative Republican 41st official president of the United States, signed our nation onto this communist agenda, and every president installed ever since has gone along with it as well, despite any rhetoric or denials to the contrary. This UNCED has reconvened 10 times at various stages of implementation ever since, but on September 25, 2015, more than 150 world leaders gathered at United Nations headquarters in New York to formally approve an ambitious new agenda for sustainable development. From their own website, the purpose of this meeting was as follows. The new plan, called Transforming Our World, the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development by 2030, included a declaration, 17 Sustainable Development Goals, and 169 targets. The goal of the plan: to find new ways to improve the lives of the world's people, to eradicate poverty, to promote prosperity and well-being for all, to protect the environment, and to fight against climate change. Yes, it all sounds wonderful, and that's how all propaganda is supposed to sound when it's being sold as the solution to chronic and systemic problems. But once you understand the problems were purposely fomented by those offering the solutions, everything comes into focus. This is where the current SDG 2030 originated, a subset target of the overall agenda for the 21st century, as laid out in Agenda 21, along with the woke diversity, equity, and inclusion BS seemingly now required in every governmental and corporate body in existence. After 23 years of frustration with a population largely ignoring their overt fear campaign and completely fabricated warnings of global warming or climate change and geological disaster if immediate action was not taken to reduce greenhouse gases and your carbon footprint, they decided that they needed to increase their propaganda and activities to force people to accept the new normal they have long planned to impose on humanity so as to meet their goals on schedule. And make no mistake about it, it is not a new normal that any freedom-loving, critical thinking, and rational human being would ever accept as objective reality. We are already living in a manufactured false reality built on generations of lies and deception that have created a world of chaos, stagnation, and decay. This is the very place they want humanity so that we will accept the New World Order, just so that the misery will finally end. In fact, here is what Henry Kissinger once proclaimed regarding this sick dream of the powers that shouldn't be. Today, America would be outraged if UN troops entered Los Angeles to restore order. Tomorrow, they will be grateful. This is especially true if they were told that there were an outside threat from beyond, whether real or promulgated, that threatened our very existence. It is then that all peoples of the world will plead to deliver them from this evil. The one thing every man fears is the unknown. When presented with this scenario, individual rights will be willingly relinquished for the guarantee of their well-being, granted to them by the world government. The whether real or promulgated part of that quote should send shivers down everyone's spine and be of extra interest to all those conspiracy theory deniers out there who believe that those in power would never conspire to commit massive crimes against humanity to further their megalomaniacal goals of world domination. No, that only happens in the movies, right? Rest assured that all major catastrophes on the world stage that gain any great media attention are promulgated and not in any sense real or natural. They are fabricated and then promoted widely to create a certain public reaction with which a solution will be offered and willingly accepted, or else. We saw this clearly play out with the COVID psyop. It is clear that they are committed to their agenda above all else and meet throughout the year, every year, in various locations throughout the world, some more secretive than others, to ensure that they will ultimately win in the end and have what they refer to as full-spectrum dominance over the human race. The manufactured COVID pandemic was all just part of the ruse to accelerate the takeover and ensure it is fully implemented by the end of this decade. Part 2. The Greenhouse Gas Deception. The decision to use the climate as a driver for their draconian agenda was decided on by many of these same insiders at a Club of Rome meeting in the 70s, prior to the release of their book Limits to Growth in 1972. 2 decades later, in 1991, their true agenda was revealed to the world in their report titled The First Global Revolution. In searching for the new enemy to unite us, we came up with the idea that pollution, the threat of global warming, water shortages, famine, and the like would fit the bill. In their totality and in their interactions, these phenomena do constitute a common threat which demands the solidarity of all peoples. But in designating them as the enemy, we fall into the trap about which we have already warned, namely mistaking symptoms for cause. All these dangers are caused by human intervention, and it is only through changing attitudes and behaviors that they can be overcome. The real enemy then is humanity itself. So, they have made it well known that the enemies of the ruling predator class and their long-range plans is humanity itself. They have also made it abundantly clear how many people they feel should be allowed to live in our world, and literally carved it in granite on the Georgia Guidestones, mysteriously erected in Elberton, Georgia, and officially unveiled on March 22nd, 322, 1980. On these guidestones were engraved 10 new commandments, or guidelines, in 8 different languages for the new age of reason in the coming century. The first two were the most controversial. Maintain humanity under 500 million in perpetual balance with nature. Guide reproduction wisely, improving fitness and diversity. Thus, the plan, even in 1980, when the worldwide population was approximately 4.5 billion, meant that somehow 4 billion people would need to be eliminated for humanity to live in perpetual balance with nature. The question is, how would they go about reducing the population and getting rid of what they referred to as useless eaters? They also confirmed themselves to be the eugenicists they've always been. If this is the type of world in which you wish to live and pass on to your children, read no further and go back to your life of meaninglessness and a perpetual quest of materialistic wealth. On the other hand, if you care about our future and the future of your children, continue on to understand why I believe Trump will be installed as the next president to carry the ball for Agenda 21 4 more years down the road, leaving just 2 more years before 2030, when a savior Democrat will be installed to put the final nail in the coffin of what was once considered to be the land of the free and the home of the brave. Looking objectively at our current reality, it's now become the land of the fee and the home of the slave. And each year, as we have progressed into the future, it has only gotten worse. And no, Trump will not make America great again. He had 4 years from 2017 through 2020, even with a majority Republican Congress his first 2 years, and did essentially none of what his empty rhetoric convinced more than half of America he would do. What the people believe is the white noise from both the leftist and right-wing media channels, who paint him to be either a complete demon or innocent victim, depending on which side of the fabricated story you choose to believe. Remember during his inauguration speech when he claimed that he came to Washington to give the power back to the people? Did you get any power back? Or are you still a tax slave on the banker's plantation? That's what I thought. But let's go to the meat of this article and allow me to explain why I believe the powers that shouldn't be will install him as the 47th President of the United States. First and foremost, as I've already highlighted, is the agenda for the 21st century. They will put into power whomever they feel will empower the agenda to move closer to full implementation without resistance by those they plan to fully enslave in the digital panopticon. By allowing Trump to reclaim the White House, they essentially get the most politically active sector of the American public, conservatives and the religious right, to stand down on fighting its implementation because they now believe that their savior has been elected to save America from the evil leftist agenda. And don't get me wrong, the leftist agenda is evil, but we're talking optics here and what these people will believe is happening as opposed to what is actually happening. We will also have the Q faction reactivated, believing that white hats within the administration are still working to take down the deep state. God help me with these gullible people. One of the primary foundations for their agenda is the false claim of global warming, which has been thoroughly debunked by numerous real scientists, meteorologists, and researchers over the past 30 years. It is a red herring logical fallacy to blame what corporations are being allowed to do by polluting our world with impunity, as well as a well-documented geoengineering program being used regularly to purposely create extreme weather events in an effort to sway public opinion that their solutions to the problem are the only way to make it all stop. We live in a world of numerous Hegelian dialectics, playing out simultaneously to move us in the direction that they want us to move. Trump will do nothing to stop any of the raping and pillaging of our earth and natural resources by corporations because he is 100% pro-capitalism, and whatever it takes to make the most amount of money for shareholders of every greedy business entity under the sun. His first 4 years of corporate-friendly legislation proved that beyond the shadow of any doubt. he will also deny, like every elected official, that weather modification programs are being used to manipulate and create events that are causing billions of dollars in damage, kill thousands of innocent people, and most importantly, remove them from lands coveted by corporations for their valuable natural resources, to which they wouldn't have easy access if the people fighting their encroachment were still there. If you look at the map, which comes from the Convention on Biological Diversity, a subset of the UNCED Agenda 21, the plan is to move all human beings off of all land in the red and yellow areas, and travel between the very sparse green areas will be heavily regulated and or completely restricted for anyone and everyone without special privileges of the ruling class. This will be enforced by a social credit scoring system already largely implemented in communist China. For years I had thought that this map was solely to rationally convince people that they were interrupting the natural flow of animals and upsetting the natural balance of our ecosystems. But after the rash of weather events and wildfires over the past few years, a greater purpose has become glaringly obvious to me. They don't want people in the red or yellow areas, not for nature, but so that corporations won't have those pesky human beings to deal with when they want to go in and extract whatever natural resources it is they want and need. And you can be assured that none of it will be restored to the way it once was after they are finished, because that would cut into their profits. The truth about the carbon dioxide lie is that historically, our world is in a CO2 starved state at the current time, and we actually need more of it for our forests and wildlands to thrive. What needs to be done is to rein in the corporations and governments who are polluting our world with toxins and their irresponsible manufacturing and extraction processes. And Trump is not one who will ever do that. Most are also not aware that war is the most environmentally damaging activity in which human beings engage. But it is our governments which start and force us into wars. Their primary job is diplomacy and working out problems with other governments via discussion, debate, treaties, agreements, and reason. But we get virtually none of that. So what is the purpose of keeping government anyway? They will always take us to war once they have failed at everything else, and the economy is in a state of irreversible collapse due to an impossible to maintain debt burden. Carbon dioxide never was nor ever will be a problem, as it is a vital part of the life cycle itself. But we are gaslit into believing that we must steal money from the people to remedy or institute draconian freedom-suppressing laws and restrictions to combat this non-existent problem. Let's start with abolishing war and forcing corporations to responsibly extract resources and manufacture products first, and see how much better our ecosystems and environment improves. Trump will do neither in his next administration. Part 3. Voting and representative democracy. Anyone with half a brain knows that the election in 2020 was stolen from the people who voted for Trump, despite all the propaganda and gaslighting from officials and the mainstream media to ensure the public that it was a fair and free election. We all know the level of censorship that was implemented for merely questioning the results, and people are still rotting in jail today for the crime of insurrection on January 6th, a day the left likes to make believe is the darkest day in American history. Dinesh D'Souza's 2,000 Mules highlights exactly the amount of deception and cheating carried out by the Democrats. So, no amount of denial by the establishment can dissuade anyone of the truth of the matter. We all know it's another of the massive lies we're told by our government, but what would be the best way to restore faith in the system of voting and democracy itself? Give this election to Trump. This way they can say, see, voting is fair and works just as it should. This accomplishes many goals, the least of which is to keep the mindless masses from questioning the system in which they live and are controlled, falsely believing that their voices were heard as they quietly go back to ignoring the big picture, thinking everything is fine in the world once again. I see this attitude every day on social media, so I know it's exactly what they will do once they feel they've won. It's been proven that both elections in 2000 and 2004 were stolen and given to Bush because the agenda during that period required a war hawk Republican president to be in office for the global war on terror to commence and perpetuate, for the bottom line of the military-industrial complex after the pre-planned and well-orchestrated false flag attack on September 11, 2001. Plus, after 8 years of a leftist Clinton administration, they had to put a conservative in office to appease the right wing of the body politic. It's just a game to them, and we are nothing more than pawns on the grand chessboard. No election shenanigans were necessary in 2008 or 2012 because Obama was such a powerful cult of personality that cheating wasn't really necessary. But his policies fully aligned with the agenda, and even though he was awarded a Nobel Peace Prize, he kept the wars raging, dropped tens of thousands of bombs, and killed thousands of people with drone strikes. But he's lauded by the left as one of the greatest presidents in American history. The delusion is overwhelmingly surreal. By giving the presidency to Trump once again, the controllers of the system will quell most, if not all, questions from the growing conservative class in America as to the legitimacy of elections. They will deactivate, go back to their lives of watching what the talking heads of Fox News, Joe Rogan, and Tucker Carlson have to say, and believe that all is well in the world, while allowing Harris to win would only activate them more, and that is the last thing they want. Never forget just how many counties Trump actually carried in the 2016 election. This is who they fear the most right now, and they will give them what they want to shut them up so that they can continue to implement the agenda. Part 4. Kamala Harris is an idiot. Before writing this article, I had been thinking for weeks about any logical reasons of allowing Harris to become president of this country, and I can find none whatsoever. They accomplished what they needed to accomplish over the past 4 years of a pathetic Biden administration, and they can now get rid of her. I mean, the entire Democratic National Convention was a rigged deception. I highly doubt that had Harris run for the ticket, she would have won the nomination. So they gave it to Biden, knowing full well that they would force him to step down and put in a puppet that would be easy to beat, even by a convicted felon. The nation's debt is at an all-time high and impossible to ever repay, but neither Harris or Trump has even addressed how devastating to the economy this model is. Sure, Trump has said he will begin to pay down the debt, but it is a mathematical impossibility, of which most people have no real understanding. And beyond the nearly $36 trillion in U.S. debt that perpetually grows by $1 million every 30 seconds of every day, there are $220 trillion in unfunded liabilities. This is money that is never, nor could ever, be honored or repaid. So we must begin to question, why has this system been put in place, and for what purpose and ends? Has Harris ever once addressed this subject? No, she hasn't. All we get from her, as well as every politician running for office, is empty rhetoric about fixing things they claim are broken and of utmost importance. She claims she will tax the rich and give to the poor like some estrogen-soaked Robin Hood, and every other Democrat politician in the past 5 decades has promised. It's all theater, and the mindless masses just eat it up without a second of thought. Her speeches are nothing more than one cliche after another and tired political assurances which are never realized once in office. I see absolutely nothing inspirational about this woman, and her ability to lead anything seems as absent as the mind of sleepy Joe Biden. But I digress. How could she move the ball down the field closer to the end zone of full implementation of SDG 2030 in just 6 years? Her movements will be open for the world, and especially the conservatives in America, to scrutinize. And they can't have that. They know that the conservatives are smarter than the leftists and have much higher values and moral foundation. They understand the suspicions of the system are growing amongst the political right, and so they must quell that uprising. Stealing yet another election for the Democrats is perhaps the most illogical thing they could do right now. They are under a microscope, and the world is waking up to the deception, especially amongst the right side of the political spectrum. So how do you get them to back off? Give them Trump, and they will. It's almost a guarantee written in stone. Part 5. Civil War. Ordo ab chaos is one of the primary mottos of the ruling predator class. They operate the world by creating one Hegelian dialectic after another and reaping the benefits bestowed upon them by manipulating the minds of the masses to not only believe the lies, but then watching the vast majority create the very false reality they wish them to manifest by falling for every single lie they think up. This is how they are creating their new world order, out of the chaos they purposely generate, because they own and control the primary methods of information dissemination. They can make people believe the absurdities that make them want to commit the atrocities they will, because they are true believers of the manufactured lies. I know more than anything else that they want the U.S. to fall under its own self-imposed destruction. But to get that to happen, they must create the scenarios and an atmosphere which would spark this self-destruction. They have been eating away at the moral fiber of this nation for well over a century already by removing virtue from accepted social norms and replacing them with vice. They have used America and the goodness of its people to further their agenda of full-spectrum dominance. America has purposely been turned into the world's police and used as the enforcer on every nation who was not willing to give up their natural resources to the corporatocracy truly controlling government without fair compensation. General Smedley Butler understood this very well when he penned War is a Racket in 1935. But now they have decided that war, once again, as they did in 1861, must come back home because they have greater plans for America under Agenda 21. We are no longer slated to be the world's leading empire because they are simply done using us for their twisted goals. We are to be reduced to a bit player on the world stage, and authoritarian nations like China are to become world leaders under the communist UN Agenda 21's plans. Freedom and individual autonomy are frowned upon by those who want complete control over the world, and America is in their way. So, just think about how much deeper the division in this country would spread when they reinstall Trump as president. They've already had 9 very productive years from 2016 through today to demonize one man and create the very type of derangement syndrome in nearly half of the population of this country. And many throughout the world have the same opinion of him, whether or not it is justified. For all I know, he may have a pure heart and intentions, but his actions reveal otherwise. That is why we all need to watch everything he does and challenge his rhetoric. I mean, this is the man who is still proud of warp speed and an injection that has killed millions of innocent people. What they are doing with everything they do is to bring America to her knees. And this agenda has been in operation for at least the past 79 years, since the inception of the United Nations in September of 1944, and just a few months later when the OSS was transformed into the CIA by Harry Truman under a presidential directive on January 22, 1946. The world has never been the same ever since, and the agenda to create a centralized one-world government has been underway for nearly 8 decades now. But the only way they can bring this to fruition is to destroy America and all that it supposedly stands for. So everything that has been done to and in the name of this nation to disparage its name, its people, and ideology has been done covertly and by design. And most people are completely oblivious to the agenda to this very day, believing that everything that happens on the world stage, as well as within our own country, is just a matter of coincidence and in no way the result of a long-term conspiratorial agenda. With all that's happened since Trump declared his candidacy for the White House on June 16, 2015, and especially since the fake pandemic of 2020, this nation is at a boiling point. All it would take is the right trigger to set off the powder keg and start a civil war. They even put out a movie earlier this year via their chosen tool of revelation of the method to predictively program the population that this is the logical end of a nation so divided by irrational hatred that violence is the only solution. I have not seen the movie, but I've seen enough reviews and clips to know that it is a scenario that is exceptionally more likely should Trump be placed in the White House once again. The left would be absolutely apoplectic, and the rage would increase to a level never before seen in our lifetime. The media circus of distraction and fanning the flames of dissension would escalate to an all-time high, and they would do so with zero shame whatsoever. I believe that Trump is their ace in the hole to instigate the final great conflagration of this once great and prosperous country. Despite all of his rhetoric to the contrary, Trump is not the solution, nor ever can be, as long as the entire system and hierarchy above government is still in place and control. Only a force united and large enough to shift the power back into our hands is the answer. I have provided a solid and comprehensive plan to do just that. It's beyond obvious who would win this civil war because we all know who owns the majority of weapons in this country, but in the end, we would all lose. Because violence is never the answer to any of our problems as a species. We have only been indoctrinated to believe that it is the solution by the ruling predator class over generations. And what I have laid out is a 100% peaceful, non-violent, viable, and actionable solution to not only the government problem, but all problems humanity faces as a species in our shared world. Part 6. The Scapegoat. I've already mentioned the insurmountable, impossible to ever repay debt burden on the US, but worldwide it is in crisis mode as well. The plan is to ultimately collapse the entire international economic engine so that they can come in with their already planned solution. And what a better scapegoat to blame it all on than one of the most hated men in American history by all those who don't understand how the system actually works. The hate-infused left will hail it as some sort of victory when they are walking around in the ruins of complete economic implosion. And it will have been a controlled demolition orchestrated by the money masters who have manipulated the world for millennia by creating money out of nothing and then charging for the privilege of using it. And what a more perfect administration to do it under than a Republican pro-capitalist one. After all, their final solution is a communist, one-world government running a technocratic system under complete financial control of everyone via the digital panopticon of a central bank digital currency. They've been telling us their plans for years now, and very few have taken heed to stop this insanity before it happens. Once it is in place, it will be too late to turn things around, unless there is a counter plan of action already known by the masses who are fully cognizant of the agenda and will know exactly what to do when all that has been warned about comes to fruition. That is, if we don't actually unite as one and stop it in its tracks before they can pull the plug. And that's what I've been advocating for 4 years now, but to very little avail because of the overwhelming level of apathy in even the supposed awakened population, let alone the sleepers. Either way, Trump is not and never will be part of the solution, because he has never alluded to any of the documented reality revealed in this article. He is either fully entrenched as part of the system and playing tens of millions of well-meaning but naive conservatives across America who believe conspiracy theories are for crazy people, or he is being used by the powers that shouldn't be to do their bidding, and he's completely oblivious because of his narcissism and myopic perception of what actually makes America great. And no, Donnie, it's not profit and greed. It's anyone's guess, but I think he's been in on it all along, and he's just a really good deceiver. Part 7. What is the real solution? If you've been following my work for any amount of time, you'll already know the answer to this question. If you're new, the answer is to align with natural law and build a replacement for government based on this simple ideology with 4 moral maxims. Donald Trump has promised to fix government when in reality, what we know is that government needs to be completely abolished. Our founding fathers even emphasized this remedy in the originating document of our nation, declaring it was not only our right, but our duty to do so when government had become destructive of its ends. And it has surpassed that well over a century ago. There's nothing about Donald Trump that would make anyone believe that he even questions the legitimacy of government or that it should ever be abolished. He is just another in a long line of demagogues who have been used to further the goals of the predatory criminal classes above government in the hierarchy of command and control, which really wields the power in our world. As I've said, he is either part of them or he is being used. But with 3 supposed attempts on his life that have all clearly been staged to only increase his stature as some sort of chosen one, I can assure you that if they wanted him gone, he would be gone. Just as they eliminated JFK, RFK, MLK, and many others who spoke out against the system. They clearly don't fear him or anything he might be able to do, or DJT would have already been added to that illustrious list. Thus, he's completely compromised either way. In the end, they are going to put in whomever they know will serve them in implementing their agenda the best. Just as every professional sports team puts in their best possible players to win the game. And from all optics I can see, that person is Trump. I may be wrong, but I just don't see how Harris is more beneficial to them than Trump at this point in time for all the reasons I've stated in this article. But this article has gotten much longer than I ever anticipated when I sat down to begin writing it, so I'll wrap it up here. I have spoken and written extensively about the plan to free humanity and offered a comprehensive plan of action to do so. Everything is available on my websites, social media, and video channels. The solutions are available. People only need to take the time to watch the videos and read the documentation to understand how much better off we'd be and just how easy it would be to make the transition. We must create a critical mass large enough to exit the system peacefully and without confrontation or resistance from the predator class because they simply do not have the resources to stop us. It can be done and it must be done because it is the only way we will ever accomplish the complete emancipation of the human race from the Matrix and Babylon system, which has been using and abusing us our entire lives. A new world awaits us. All we need to do is take action and do the right things. And voting for more of the same is the wrong thing. That should be blatantly obvious to any rational and reasonable adult by now. We have the power to change our world. We only need to realize and exercise it. A peaceful transition to a much better world is just on the horizon. Unite and help to activate this positive plan of action. No one is going to do it for us, so we must do it for ourselves.